Whew, how are y'all doing today, this evening, this morning? I just wanted to get on here and talk about the irrevocable trust and the benefits of an irrevocable trust. But the first thing and the most important thing to starting an irrevocable trust is your intention. Why are you starting a trust? And I'll let you guys know right now, if you're starting or wanting to create an irrevocable trust to not pay taxes or avoid taxes, I can guarantee you, you will miss something, a very, very altering detail that'll help or hurt your trust. Now, I started with the intention behind starting an irrevocable trust because when it comes to a revocable trust, the grantor being you, creator or executor, whatever you want to call it, the person that started the trust, they can revoke the trust because they have all the power, they have all the cards, they can fire the trustees, all of those things. Now, an irrevocable trust, you give your assets up legally and on paper to no less than 2 trustees. And the 2 trustees will be your representatives for the trust. Now, your intention is number 1. And most people start an irrevocable trust with the intention of generating, income or wealth for the beneficiaries, their children or grandchildren, mostly family. It can be anyone. But your intention has to be number 1. And it's more than likely for the beneficiaries, someone you want to benefit from the trust. And that is called a distribution. It can be however you want. And the indenture, and the trust indenture is next. So now that you have your intention, you have your trust indenture or your declaration of trust. That is the playbook. That's what the trustees go to. That's what the protector goes to. And the protector is someone who can fire the trustees. So the trustees are over the other members in the trust, and the protector is over the trustees. Protector can fire the trustees can fire the general manager, treasurer, and executive secretary. So now, the trust indenture will have all of the legal details pertaining to a trust for your state. So I would look up your state's codes. So for California, they have California codes pertaining to the trust. Now, this is irrevocable trust. Now, there's 2 kinds of irrevocable trust. You have statutory, which has the power from the courts or the governmental system, and you have common law, which is from you being a man, a woman, given free will, God-given rights, freedom, liberty, to do as you please as long as you are harming no one or causing anyone issues. Now, your trust indenture will have everything in it that'll help the trustees and the protector and every other member in the trust to follow. Because when they have everything to follow, basically what you're doing is you're taking no less than a year. That's my preference. That's my opinion. But I'm not a legal, I have no pieces of paper. I have no legal rights or anything like that. I have no, whatever you call it. I'm not a financial advisor. There we go. But I say no less than a year to gather all the information and the intricate details you need for this irrevocable trust, because again, it's irrevocable. You as the grantor starting it, you cannot change whatever you want freely as you would with a revocable trust. So at least a year to get all the details that you can before finding the third key is administration. Before finding people to contract with your irrevocable trust to protect and increase the income of the irrevocable trust for your beneficiaries, protect your assets, which would be, homes, land, helicopters, insurance policies, tangible and intangible things to protect. That's what the trustees will do. And everyone else that they hire. Now, you as the grantor, the only person that you would hire outside of the trust indenture is the protector. The protector is the one who can fire the trustees if they're caught violating the trust indenture. They can also ask for audits from the banks and from the treasurer, general manager, executive secretary, whoever else is over the funding. And then if they catch some discrepancies, they can fire the trustees or ask them to resign as the first resolve. And the protector is also the mediator and arbitrator also outside of the court system. This is for the common law irrevocable trust, but for statutory, you might have to go to court. But the protector is the common law irrevocable trust mediator and arbitrator, so that you do not have to go into the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, when the trustees violate the trust indenture, the protector must send a letter. But then also, before I even get into that, this is why the common law irrevocable trust is far better than the statutory irrevocable trust, because the statutory irrevocable trust is based on statutes from whatever state you're living in this country, the U.S. Now, the common law, as long as what you're putting in there isn't violating anything to harm or hurt someone, it can be whatever you want it to be. So an example would be if two members of the trust, and this is just a detail, this is just to show how detailed you can get in your indenture when explaining what the protector can do, or the trustee or the executive secretary. You basically describe what they can do and what they cannot do, or procedures to go through so that something can happen. Now, let's say two members in the trust. This is an example in the trust indenture. If two members in the trust says, or if two members of the trust finds evidence of the trustees violating the trust indenture, the protector can start auditing immediately and open an investigation right after also. That's just a simple detail that can go in the indenture. So, but the protector is signed on by you because you're the grantor. The protector is so that you do not have to go into the court system of this country. So again, number one is your intention. Why are you starting this trust? Number two is the trust indenture and all the details, intricate details that go into it, so that the trustees know what to do and all the other members know what to do. Because this is going to be a trust that is going to outlive you. So think about the things that could be asked. That's what this year, that's why I said at least a year before trying to find people to do what's in that indenture that you created. Now, let's say you have a few people that you have in mind, and so real quick, number one is your intention. Number two is the trust indenture. That's the playbook. Number three is administration. Now, number four is what I'm about to get into, and that's contracting. For the common law trust, your contract is based on the United States Constitution. And this is your right to contract. This is what makes this trust so controversial, and why most people don't know about it. But when you find out about it, and why the common law irrevocable trust is probably the biggest threat to this country, is your right to contract. Now, let's say you find people that you have in mind, or you have people in mind that you want to contract with to do these duties that you have in your trust indenture. You will contract them. You'll make the contract again according to common law, as long as you're not trying to harm or hurt anyone, but also within certain statutes pertaining to trust. So you don't want to overdo it or put anything in there ridiculous. Now, when the people read it, when they read the duties and the liabilities and the restraints, if they agree to it, then you have someone that wants to sign a contract. You made an agreement. So number one is your intention. Number two is your trust indenture or declaration of trust. Number three is administration. Number four is contracting. Now, number five is probably the biggest one that separates most trust. Well, actually not. I'm not going to do that yet. Minutes will be next. Number five is minutes. Minutes are meetings. They just call it minutes because minutes. Those are the meetings. Basically, the board of trustees all meet. The two trustees, remember, no less than two trustees for this irrevocable common law trust. Two trustees, executive secretary, general manager. You can have as many of those as you want, and trustees as well. Treasurer and steward. You can have basically people under those guys to help when the trust amasses, more wealth and produces a bigger income. As much people as you need so that the trust can be maintained. Now, these meetings will protect you if ever there is an audit that needs to happen. An audit will be your fault if you do not have minutes. Minutes go over the details, and who takes the minutes more than likely is the executive secretary, or if the trust is a lot larger, the executive secretary will have someone to do that for them. But the minutes will protect you in legal battles because you have evidence of what was stated, who was there, And this is what this document needs to be as professional as possible. Mr. and Mrs. No contractions, no do, no don't, can't, won't, shouldn't, wouldn't, no contractions. Should not, do not, cannot, will not. As professional as possible. Mr. and Mrs. Now these minutes, again, are very important. And this is basically, if a corporation had meetings, this is what it would be. Now, last but not least is probably the biggest threat to this country is TCUs. This is what your beneficiaries receive on behalf of the family trust, because the family trust must have an income. You as the grantor cannot put funds into the trust so that the trust can have money. That'll make it a grantor trust, and you will be taxed as the grantor. So in order for you not to be taxed, the trust has to have its own income. Now, when the trust has its own income, that means you could, do real estate. Again, you can also have a partnership. Let's say you want a candy company. Let's say you run a candy company and you want your family trust to receive a monthly income from it. You would do a partnership, make a contract, do a partnership with your candy company and the trust. Let's say the trust gets 40%, the candy company gets 60%. There's your partnership. Now, excuse me, guys. Gotta get a drink of water. So the trust must have its own income, because again, a trust is a legal entity. Now, another one for you guys. At the beginning of the video, when I asked what was your intention and if you wanted this trust to avoid taxes, then it wasn't going to end well. Now, I wasn't saying that you weren't going to avoid taxes, but your intentions, basically, where's your heart at to start this trust? If it's for selfish reasons, then you'll make mistakes. But if it's for the benefit of others, you'll be tedious and you'll take care, you'll take your time. Now, this next part is another threat with the common law irrevocable trust. It is exchanges and transfers. So if you want your child to have something, let's say the house that they grew up in, gifting it to your child will make it taxable. But exchanging it into the trust and and transferring the title will not make it taxable. So let's say you got a car, you exchange the car into the trust, but you transfer the title of the car into the trust name. Again, you exchange the car into the trust, but you transfer the title of the car into the trust name at the DMV. Why is that not taxable? I forgot the court case, but fair market value. if the buyer and seller is willing to agree, I forgot how it goes, but if the buyer is if there's a, sorry guys, I forgot how it went, but I know the buyer and seller agree that they're willing to buy at an acceptable price or willing to sell at an acceptable price, something like that. Basically, that exchange has no fair market value, so it is not taxable. Now, where the tax does come into play is from the distribution. The trust will file a 1041, and for the taxes. And the trust, specifically the trustees, will mail K1s to the beneficiaries, and the beneficiaries take those K1s and claim it on their taxes, and they pay the taxes, because the common law irrevocable trust is a pass-through entity. Therefore, it does not pay tax, little to no taxes. I'll reiterate that, little to no taxes. But again, that goes also back to administration. Who is on your team? What knowledge do they have? You can also hire advisors and counselors from trust companies to make this accounting team aware of what they're doing. On paper, it's just a trust. To the world, it's a trust. But to the members, and you, the grantor, it is an organization, a government, as you will. So, it's very important that your accounting team is aware of what they're putting on the papers and the documents that they send to the IRS. But funny enough, the IRS might not even be around by the time some of you guys get to this video. So, but understanding is key. If you don't have understanding, you got to find it. Wisdom is the principal thing. With all thy getting, get understanding. These are very overlooked details. So, the exchange is, again, you exchange the car into the trust. And again, that's your right to contract. Your right to contract. Excuse me, guys. Meaning you as the grantor, you would make a document, type it up, explain what the property is, the year, all the details that you need. The year, what brand it is, stuff like that. And you would have the trustees at the next minute's meeting, have the trustees sign on it and agree. And that's the exchange right there. Because again, the trust is a separate legal entity because you have a minimum, no less than 2 trustees, and your trust is producing a cash flow. Off rip, it is alive. Off rip, it is alive. And it is considered legal. It is a valid trust, a legal entity. And then again, go to the DMV and transfer the title into the name of the trust. You guys, these things are very tedious. And when you understand that details, the devil's not in the details, no. The creator is in the details. When you understand this, you understand that you are creating like the creator on a smaller scale. It says a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. That's what this common law irrevocable trust is about. So, sorry guys, I'm getting a walk in, so feels good out here. But the exchange has no fair market value. There's no price. That's why the trust doesn't pay taxes, because there's no fair market value between the buyer, which is the trust, and the seller, which is you, the grantor. But you would be the exchanger in this scenario. Whenever you put something into the trust, you are an exchanger. And that could be anyone in the trust. Any of the board members becomes an exchanger other than the title that they already have. So you as a grantor, you are only a grantor. But when you exchange something into the trust, you are an exchanger. Same thing for the trustees, executive secretary, general manager. They all have those titles. Then when they exchange something into the trust, they are an exchanger. And they also receive what's called TCUs. Now, this is the distribution portion. The TCUs, and this is why this is another big threat, the TCUs are what's distributed to the beneficiaries. And the TCU stands for Trust Certificate Units. So the units of this currency of this country is dollars. And instead of US dollars, we're saying trust certificate units. The unit is not dollars. The unit is backed up by the value of the trust. So let's say the trust, let's say you as the grantor exchange a 1,000-acre farm into the trust. Since you did that, the trust is backed by the value of that land. A farm, you can have houses on. You have food and shelter, clothing, water. And also let's say one day you find gold and silver in the ground. The point is, it's backed by a different value. In this country, the currency that they created was backed by silver and gold. But in 1933, President Roosevelt, declared this country to be bankrupt and took all the silver coins, well, the majority of the silver coins and gold out of circulation and introduced currency. And before this currency that we have today was in circulation, we had currency that was backed by silver and gold. Now, the value of the trust is backed by the land. Just like how the majority of the wars that are started are over land, where precious metals are, where oil is. All of these things are important, and that's the danger and the threat to this country. Because your currency or trust certificate units are backed by a different value, and that's the value of the land. You have cattle, you have chickens, you have food, you have shelter, you have water, and that's what people need to survive. So, TCUs. And also, the beneficiaries are not the only ones that receive TCUs. Also, the trustees receive TCUs. And this is another important aspect to make this common law, for it to be a common law, irrevocable trust. You as the grantor have to have less TCUs than the trustees. So the trustees have to have more TCUs than everybody. And when they have more TCUs, that tells the rest of the world that you as the grantor gave up full power to the trustees to act on your behalf and your family's behalf and on your family's behalf. So when you have at least two trustees, when the trust has an income without interference, so when the trust has income and when the trustees have more TCUs than the grantor, that automatically makes the trust, irrevocable common law trust, a valid legal entity. But the first two off rip, is when you have at least two trustees. If you're the grantor and you try to be the trustee, you will be taxed as the grantor. Because you have full power. You have full power. You can fire the trustees as well. So when the trustees have more TCUs, that means they hold power. But that also, don't be afraid, because that's where your trust indenture comes into play. What you put in your trust indenture will affect the generations to come. So you can also limit the trustee as well. So don't be alarmed by that. Now, since they have more TCUs than you, and again, it could be both trustees have one more TCU than you. It could be as simple as that. Let's say you have 500 TCUs. Don't be worried about how many TCUs there are, because again, your currency is backed by a different value. So let's say you have 500 TCUs. Let's say the first trustee gets 120 TCUs. Now, as the grantor, since you start the trust, you automatically get 1% of the TCUs. So out of 500 TCUs, that's 5 TCUs off rip. You get 5 TCUs. And when you exchange something into the trust, depending on this value, you either get and this is what the meetings are for, the minutes are for, where the board of trustees and all the other members discuss the value. Mostly you, as the grantor, and the trustees will discuss the value of the TCUs. So depending on whatever value you guys discuss and agree upon, that'll be how much TCUs you get for exchanging whatever you exchange into the trust. So, good stuff. Trust me, I know I was amazed when I started to learn this stuff. But yep, 2 trustees, at least a minimum of 2 trustees, and they have to have more TCUs than the grantor, because that shows that they have, I forgot the term as of now, but they have the irrevocable power. I forgot their terms. But basically the grantor can't disband the trust. They can't, the grantor can't terminate the trust, because he or she does not have the revocable power anymore, because he does not, or she does not have all the majority of the TCUs, the trust capital units, which is the currency of the trust, backed by whatever is exchanged into the trust. Now, what's next is the other trust. Now, the family trust is, and this is where, again, your power of contract comes into play again from the U.S. Constitution. The family trust, I forgot to tell you guys, you can name the trust whatever name, family trust right after that. Okay? So the family trust will be the management trust of all other trusts. So let's say you have the family trust is named Doe Family Trust. That's the name of the trust. And that'll be the management trust. And you have an agreement as the grantor. You type up an agreement, and you also put details of what the management trust can do for other trusts. Now, the other trust can be asset holding trust. But before you do asset holding trust, again, remember, you need to have a trust that has its own income before anything. So the management trust, the family trust is on the top. You have a business trust. And again, you can do a partnership with the candy company that you're running, or a gas station that has income. And also you can start a whole nother trust under that management trust to produce its own income, like real estate. And you can name that trust after someone's name in the family or something like that, and that'll be under the management trust. And then you would create a document, an agreement, a contract stating that the management trust will do this, this, and this for the trust that's producing income. Basically take care of all the finances and the accounting and the management of it, so that you don't have to so that there's no, how does this trust do this? Who's going to run this trust? That will be the trustees. So depending on how big your trust gets, you can have another trustee. You can have one of the two trustees that you started with run that trust, or just have the power of signature to sign at the next minutes meeting when you bring this contract to them. So both trustees, and that can also go in your indenture. You can say one trustee can sign for a new trust that started, or for an asset trust for more detail. But as long as you have a document and that you have minutes, documents, which are contracts or agreements that the trustees must sign, and you as a grantor must sign at the meetings or the minutes, you have evidence for any audits that may be asked of you. So, excuse me guys, my throat is scratchy. So, these are the intricate details of an irrevocable common law trust. And these are needed so that the trust pays little to no taxes. And so that you, as the grantor, also for sure does not pay taxes. And so that the beneficiaries eat, and also the beneficiaries receive a distribution and they pay the taxes, but the taxes will be little. The taxes will be little. So, compared to the trust paying the taxes. Because let's say your trust makes $300,000 a year. Do you really want the trust to pay those taxes? Or the beneficiaries that's receiving a distribution from that yearly income? I would rather the beneficiaries pay the tax with the K-1, so claim it on their taxes and pay it. But these are various details to distinguish between an irrevocable common law trust and an irrevocable statutory trust. The irrevocable statutory trust does not have TCUs. It has no currency because it gets its power from the statutes of whatever state you're in, or whatever statutes that there are on trust. So when you realize the power of knowing who you are, knowing that you were created to create, and you are not created to follow, not to follow man. Let me reiterate that. You're not created to follow man. You're created to create and follow in the steps of the Creator, which is, again, to create. That's when this irrevocable common law trust will seem a lot better than any other trust out there, because it's also an opportunity to bring the family together. This is a form of government, because you're not depending on this country or their government for your livelihood. So again, a quick recap before I end this video. Number 1 is your intention. Number 2 is your trust indenture. Number 3 is administration, your team. Number 4, what would number 4 be? Number 4 would be exchanges. No fair market value, so there is no taxable basis. The beneficiaries pay the tax. Number 5, beneficial distribution. Again, the beneficiaries pay the tax when the trust or the trustees send them a K-1. Therefore, the trust pays little to no tax because it is a pass-through entity. What was that, number 4? Was that number 5? I forgot, guys, sorry. I guess number 6 would be TCUs, backed by trust capital units, just like United States dollar, but these are backed by the trust and what is in the trust. The value is not just also, also the value is not of the trust. The wealth of the trust is not just what's in it, but also who's working with the trust, meaning your board of trustees, because you have to have a cohesiveness, a group of people for it to be valid, for it to be functional. But you as the grantor, you need to study administration, the roles of all members of the trust, so that you get a good understanding, so that you can answer the questions when you start your irrevocable common law trust, mostly to creative cohesiveness and get on the same track so that there's no confusion about what to do, who does what, when, how, and that you have files and the knowledge and the understanding and the wisdom to pour into these people so that they can benefit your family, your beneficiaries, you, and themselves. Because again, they can exchange things into the trust as well so that they don't have to pay the taxes on those heavy taxes for homes and land and anything else that they want to put in there. Oh, and I almost forgot. The asset holding trust. That is another important one. And again, it comes to contracts. That'll be number 8. Contracts. Contracts to give yourself and the trust members, the board members, legal documents if you're ever audited. Let's say you want to put a book, a very important book on family history, or a cookbook with ingredients in it for a special family recipe. That would go in an asset holding trust. And again, the management trust will manage all trust. You never, and again, well, not again. This is another important thing. You do not put more than one thing in an asset holding trust. If you have a car that you like very much, that goes in one trust. And the family trust manages it. You can name that whatever. Mercedes-Benz trust. And the management trust manages that with the contract that you created to exchange it into the trust. And let's say another trust, you have land, vacant land. Smoky Mountains Trust. That'll be another separate trust. And the family trust will manage that when you bring, and again, another agreement, putting details on it and putting signature places for the trustees to sign. Or again, in your trust indenture, if you only need one trustee to sign, that specific trustee would sign on that contractual agreement that you created. Again, you're the grantor, the creator, the executor of this family trust. So everything that you need, you create. You don't need to go to a lawyer. You don't need statutory allowance to have the power that you have. Again, we are the creator, following in the steps of the creator on a smaller scale. So we can create everything that we need for this trust. You don't need to get it from another person. Now, unless you want legal advice, you can hire advisors and counselors. But other than that, you can create everything that you need. Oh yeah, and contracts. Most important are the contracts. Again, you don't need to go to a lawyer to get a contract. If you know how to type, you know how to create a business type of letter. All you're doing is putting details. So let's say, again, you want to put land in the trust. You want to put what's on the land, the acreage of the land, the city, the state. It does not have to be an extensive. It could be less than a page. And then the signatures go at the bottom. And the trustees would agree or disagree. But again, you always have to attend to wise counsel. Wise counsel. So there's no fair market value on this stuff. And the trust is the buyer. And whoever's in the board of trustees that exchanges anything into the trust will be considered an exchanger. But they always will have the title of whatever title that they have. Executive secretary, trustee, grantor, general manager, treasurer. Anyone that's in the family trust, and the board of trustees can exchange something into the trust. Whew. But yeah, these are very important things to an irrevocable common law trust. And these things are a life changer. So on your 1 year, at least 1 year journey to creating your trust indenture or declaration of trust, you will, I guarantee you will get on a spiritual journey to think about more than yourself, because that's what this trust is all about. It's about bringing the family together, bringing strangers together that have the same mindset, that has the same heart, the same pure intentions, and creating an organization, a family government, if you will, so that you are not dependent on this country, because this country is falling, and how hard the fall is. So, but that's all I have for you guys tonight, this evening, morning, day, whatever time it is for you. Oh, excuse me. And that'll be it. Shalom.